People who say that we should reduce suffering instead of ending it with total extinction are by default saying that all of the extreme suffering and the victims of lives of pure hell that result from reducing suffering and still allowing some instead of just ending it all, they're saying that all of that suffering is acceptable for the happiness and the good lives that come out of it. So they still see, the current system and even that reducing suffering system, they both have a dynamic of allowing exploitation, allowing extreme suffering, and seeing it as something that doesn't have to be stopped at all costs, but something that can just be reduced slightly while we focus on the more important thing of happiness. But that's the wrong way round. We shouldn't be focusing on pleasure and happiness. We should be focusing on preventing suffering and ending suffering with total extinction. It's only by reducing life to zero that you can actually prevent all of the suffering that life causes. That goes for animals, that goes for humans, and all life. And there is no way to actually end suffering without extinction. So reducing suffering essentially means allowing suffering forever, allowing a standard of extreme suffering being acceptable, not being top priority, which means that in that dynamic, it's always going to allow victims and generate victims, and you're never actually going to prioritize safety and total safety from suffering, which only extinction can provide. So again, even if you're in a simulation or something and you think you're safe, it can go wrong, essentially. Unless you know everything and you're all-knowing, then there are unknowns and it's not safe. There's still infinite danger unless you are essentially all-knowing and you know that there are no unknowns. So only extinction can provide a guarantee of safety. If there is nothing that can suffer, then there will be no suffering, but the more life there is, the more victims there are, the more people and animals that can suffer. So reducing life down to zero and preventing it from ever coming back with the most vast and thorough extinction possible is the only way to defend the victims from suffering, to minimize suffering to zero, and to have a high standard of respect for life, that it shouldn't be forced to exist in unsafe conditions and the infinite danger of this world, that we should have a zero tolerance policy on extreme suffering and allowing life to exist or be forced into danger without its consent and for no good reason, right? Reproduction is from nature, it's brainless, it's thoughtless, and all it does is cause suffering. So it's not something to be respected, it's something to be stopped, basically, right? Animals just reproduce without thinking and it causes suffering, it traps innocents into lives of hell, and humans are doing the same thing. So there's no good reason for them to be reproducing, at least in their heads. They're doing it without really thinking about it. Now, ironically, we do actually need humans to keep reproducing until we can complete animal extinction and the most vast and thorough extinction possible, which has to be scientifically determined and carried out. So we can't do human extinction yet, otherwise we risk allowing animals and other life to suffer. So we can't even allow humans to decline in population yet. In fact, the more humans, the better right now, because that means that we'll have more scientists, there'll be more people working on extinction, and we can do it for animals, and we can do the best extinction sooner rather than later. With fewer people, it will be more difficult to do a proper extinction for animals and other life, and even for humans. So join the movement today, the pro-extinction movement, and do peaceful activism to grow the movement, get new people on board, working on the problem of extinction, how to take over the world and to start running it ethically so that we can start doing extinction properly. Join us today, do peaceful activism through proextinction.com, or check out the links on my TikTok profile, join our Discord, our WhatsApp, check out the website, and become an activist today. Stand up against extreme suffering and lives of pure hell. Help us make sure that nobody has to suffer ever again. That's more important than life existing, and there is no other way to guarantee safety. If you can hypothetically do it, I'd like to hear it, but nobody's been able to provide an argument against the need to be all-knowing so that there's no unknowns, right? To essentially have omniscience. So that is the standard for safety that we would require. And essentially omniscience, that and knowledge, certainty of safety, that life can exist and that it will never go wrong, that it's impossible for it to go wrong, and that we know everything. So there are literally no unknowns. It's physically impossible for there to be any unknowns in the entire universe and beyond, right? So you'd have to understand, the reality of nature itself, everything. You would have to be all-knowing to say, I can guarantee safety, right? So that's the standard. Anything less than that, we have to go with extinction. Otherwise, you're risking suffering and lives of pure hell, right? Even in a simulation, if it goes wrong, you could be suffering for billions of years if you get trapped somehow. So you wouldn't want that, right? You wouldn't want to exist in a world where it can go wrong and you can be trapped in a life of hell. That's what we have right now. And even in a simulation, that could happen, right? So it would be the wrong thing to go into that simulation if there's no certainty of safety, right? You could be trapped in hell forever. And that's the same with life today. So support extinction and the safety of it. No lives of pure hell, no possibility of lives of pure hell, no extreme suffering. That is infinitely more important than having life exist, which again is for no reason, right? People reproduce at the minute for animalistic reasons. They're not thinking it through. It's not for a good reason. It's just because they feel like it. So we do need to reproduce for a good reason, and we also need to work together for a good reason. And the only good reason worth fighting for is the end of all suffering. So support total extinction with us. Do peaceful activism to educate people that suffering is unacceptable and that we have to get together and make total extinction and the end of all suffering possible. That's the only way to respect life, to have a high respect for life, to say it deserves to not be forced into danger where it can suffer terribly and be trapped into a life of hell, ever. So that's what most people don't agree with, but we need to educate them on why it is the truth, right? Nobody deserves to suffer. Life should not exist without certainty of safety, because the alternative is infinite danger, and the unlucky ones will always pay the ultimate price, or everyone will pay the ultimate price, where you're trapped in a life of pure hell, begging for death, wishing you'd never been born, and that can be for your entire life. So that's not an acceptable thing, and it's happening all around us. We have to put an end to it. Extinction is the only ethical thing. Anything else is an unhealthy obsession with pleasure, and it's just irresponsible, basically, right? The responsible thing is for life to not exist, because we can't provide safety for it. It's not safe for life to exist, so it is wrong, and nobody's, creating life or allowing it for, for a good reason. They're not thinking it through. So if you do think it through, you'll realize, okay, this is wrong. Look at all the suffering that's going on. This is not acceptable, okay? Join us today at proextinction.com.